This is my case study narrative for education leadership. Here we go. So I'm going to start with kind of the one sentence, exactly what happened. David and James were suspended for having a weapon during school and while implementing punishment for the two students. The assistant principal is having a moral dilemma to punish one and not the other. So we'll start back at section one in terms of what happened. James, who is a frequent troublemaker, was called to the office in which he gave a weapon, brass knuckles, to David to hold for him so he didn't get into trouble. In handing over the weapon to keep secret, he was caught by the teacher, and they were both sent to the office. After finding the weapons, the boys were arrested and punished for having a weapon at school. Both David and James have been taken to the youth facility, and the vice principal needs to complete the paperwork to get the boys admitted to the district's alternative program. Um, those involved, obviously James, David, the teacher who turned them in, assistant principal who is writing them up, the parents of the students, the director of secondary education who is threatening the assistant principal if he does not take both boys in um, to the alternative program, then some administrative decisions will need to be made regarding him. Has anybody been harmed by this action or decision? Um, no one has been physically harmed by this. In fact, by acting, this possibly stopped someone from being harmed. And the decision to suspend both boys and send them to the correction facility was probably just. Does this action or situation contravene or an existing law? Nope. Suspending them for 45 days is the current policy. Was this a breach of contract? Were the actions discriminatory or constitute harassment? Well, in the case of the assistant principal, a failure to perform one's duties as set in the contract is considered one of the most serious breaches of contract. So if the assistant principal disobeys, he can be let go, fired, or other consequences. So, just some facts of the case that we just state in the facts here. James is a tattooed student, troublemaker. Um, in terms of ethnicities, we don't know of any ethnicities. We know of sex. We can guess the ages of the people. Um, we know that the um, David Ramos could be an ethnic name, but it's not inconclusive. The teacher is obviously female. Assistant principal is a local, so he's from around there. His power is probably over the students. The police officers have the power to just execute the law. Parents of the boys are either highly involved or not too involved in the boys' life or their future. Place The place is Rocket Junior High, roughly 900 students, which is a good student size. It said South Side, so we can assume it's urban, and we can kind of suspect that it's a Christian society due to an upcoming Christmas concert. The program, curriculum, grade level, special education, bilingual, private versus public. We can't really specify whether it's private or public. It's a junior high school. It doesn't give us ages, but roughly grades 6 through 9 are junior high, and around ages 11 to 15. So, could this conflict situation or decision be damaging to the stakeholders or the community? Well, the decision to send David to an alternative education program could destroy him like others that have been sent there, is what it says. This could be damaging to the student that was an honor student, standout trombone player, and a stand up young man. What individuals or group have more important stakes in the outcome? I think the two boys and their families have a lot of stake um, in what's on the line for them. Have all stakeholders been consulted? It's clear that not all stakeholders were treated equal, and probably the communication wasn't properly done. Thus, I think the answer for this is no. And the questions that I have um, really are: could I learn more about the situation? Who was James going to target after school? Was there a target, or was this brought to impress somebody? How did David play into this? is he really innocent, or is this a situation of being in the wrong hands at the wrong time? Is there any restorative practices that can be done by the school to help solve the problem? Does this punishment need to be the same for both boys? Could higher ups be consulted, or even the boys be talked to in terms of what they feel their punishment should be? What is the goal for putting them in the alternative program? When do they graduate from the DAEP? And could they return to the school? Do I know enough to make a decision? For me, there's not enough investigation into the causes of why the kids have the weapon. The suspensions are a non-negotiable thing, so I wouldn't challenge that. But there's something to be done with restorative practice piece, and if one student gets to come back, why not the other? Unless there's a legitimate danger to other students or staff, is kind of my thought process on that. Identify your options and possible consequences. Well, I would definitely take action, because bringing a weapon to school is not allowed and should have consequences. The second, to consider the most comprehensive or liberal actions you might take. Well, the most comprehensive and to the book ways were really how this situation was really handled. Both boys were caught with a weapon at school, went to the juvenile facility, and both boys were admitted to the alternative program. Well, supposedly, one, not the other. The most liberal thing to do would be kind of just a slap on the hand and bring those kids back into school. Identify several intermediate strategies. Do not rule out any option. As far as an intermediate, I think that some of the strategies would be to seek some social emotional help for both boys, have them create a disciplinary consequence for themselves that they would be accountable for, and follow up, and try to have some restorative practices that build relationships between students, educators, and administration. This would help resolve conflicts that groups or individuals at the school are having, and could possibly have saved students from future harm. So I think, in terms of evaluating, I think great leaders identify solutions to problems. If the leader instills restorative practices, then student, teacher, and administration relationships would be built, and there could be long-lasting positive changes on that. If handled right, this could be a learning opportunity and an opportunity for both students to stay at the junior high school. Student leadership sets the tone for disciplinary climate of the school and supports the support it has for the kids. The cons: some of the solutions, including the alternative school and juvenile detention, could harm the both boys physically and the families, mentally and physically. By not establishing clear expectations for both boys, creates a unsafe environment and could harm the educational process and environment for the other students, teachers, and administration. Disciplinary policies and actions that host negative outcomes tend to lead to dropouts, more criminal behaviors, and violent crimes. So, being able to deal with this in a positive situation would be great. Choose the best decision. Making sound decision. Sorry, can't read right now. But making a sound decision requires a final reflection. First, I would identify a goal in which I would like to set for both students, where they want to go, and start gathering information about our options. We should consider the consequences being juvenile detention, alternative school, and suspensions. Also consider the possible consequences of bringing the students back to school. That could have some negative connotation too, if not done properly. I would really try to restorative practices to give equal and equitable opportunities to rehabilitate the students and to the school. Have all stakeholders been consulted? In something as big as this, I think all stakeholders should be consulted, continually contacted, and in the goals, decisions, and implementation of consequences. Do I think all involved in the story were? No, absolutely not. In these decisions, all stakeholders should be involved and at least contacted. The teacher in this instance gets little attention, but it is her class and setting that the incident occurred. Being a teacher myself, this is the most frustrating thing when it comes to school discipline, not being contacted and not knowing what's going through. Everybody needs to be involved in the support of these two young men, because ultimately this needs to be something that brings safety and trust back to a place where it was lost. So my decision here: due to the incident that happened in Mrs. Blank's class, David R. and James have been suspended bringing a weapon to school. Both students have served time at a youth facility and will be suspended for 40 days and are being recommended to attend the district's DAEP alternative program. Our school will abide with the district policy, and both boys will be admitted to the DAEP immediately so that they are getting their academic needs that they might have missed during this incident. It is within my recommendation that these students have the opportunity to participate and have a chance to pass or graduate out of the DAEP alternative program. If it is at all possible, I would like our district to work with our school to set up a restorative program and would like to establish this with our counselors, staff, and our students so that we can make changes and so that these young men and future students that make poor choices have opportunities to come back and make positive difference in our school. I know that this could possibly be another plan if students want to um, do a book study, some restorative practice, or work with me individually while attending the alternative school, and write the board a readmittance letter within a given time. In all circumstances, I beg the courts, the district, and the superintendent that you would allow these students to earn the opportunity to come back to Rocket Junior High School. Let me know if there's anything else we can do to help these young men. Thanks, Michael Waido.